Gather around, folks, as I recall to you the details of the most WTF moment of my life. I'm typing this up on my phone, so I apologize in advance if I make any grammatical errors or the format isn't quite perfect. Now on with the show we go. This takes place sometime around the summer of September 2010. I, 25 female, was about 14 or 15 years old at the time. My family wasn't super financially well off, but my dad managed to pull together a family camping trip to Savannah, Georgia. Though Savannah wasn't home to the most beautiful of beaches, it was a beach that held a lot of sentimental value. I remember camping on Tybee Island many times as a kid. I was over the moon excited to be going back for the first time since I was a much smaller kid, and this time I was getting to bring my best friend. The weekend had never looked more enticing. The trip started off normal. We got to the campsite and my dad started to set up his tent. My oldest brother and his girlfriend were just hanging out. My older brother busy exploring the site, and my friends and I were hanging out on the picnic table, near the rather small tent. After everything was set up, we were all just hanging out, relaxing as it was already getting late by this time. Might be worth mentioning that I come from a 420 friendly household, so please refrain from judgment. Anyways, we were just chilling and smoking a little joint when our camp neighbor pops out from his tent. He must have smelled our ganja, so he came over and introduced himself. We'll call him Dan. He's in his mid-50s, around 6 foot, give or take an inch or two. About ear length, wavy, Gracie looking gray hair. Kinda made my skin crawl a little bit, but So Dan comes up and introduces himself and asks to smoke with us. My friend and I didn't partake in the group chat as we just didn't really give a crap, like most teen girls wouldn't, so we just conversed amongst ourselves close by so we could still smoke, but far enough away that we wouldn't have to engage in conversation with Dan. I wasn't too worried as I had my 2 older brothers and my dad there to protect us, and the one thing about the middle oldest brother is that he was a wild little shit who would probably kill the guy if he tried anything funny. But regardless, I was still aware of how much Buddy gave me the heebie-jeebies. However, he didn't try anything, so that was cool. Just played guitar with my dad and oldest brother until we all decided to crash. That night, my friend and I decided to sleep on the picnic table. The tent with my dad felt too small and we felt too cool to share one with him. One of my brothers was already sleeping in the car, and my eldest brother took off with his girlfriend to go sleep on the beach. So we decided, screw it, let's sleep on the table. Bad idea. We spent the whole night getting eaten by mosquitoes and feeling like we were being watched. It was terrible. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. We slept in the car the rest of the trip. The next morning, Dan popped up on us again as we were smoking a morning bowl while readying ourselves to go get breakfast. My dad, being the total gent that he is, invites Dan to come along. At this point, he seemed normal enough. Stinky, but nice enough. Never said anything weird to me or my friend, but I could just feel something off about him. But again, I felt safe with my brothers and my dad. I felt like just the appearance of my dad would be enough to make him steer clear of us. My dad's not too tall, but he is fit, covered in tattoos with long hair and several facial piercings. Total metalhead, and despite his big heart, he had the male equivalent of a resting bitch face. So breakfast started off normal. We're all baked and giggling, enjoying our scrumptious-ass breakfast, when all of a sudden Dan pipes up. He starts talking about the show Hannah Montana. We all exchanged glances like, is this grown-ass man really raving about a teen television series? So we all sit back and listen. Dan goes on about how beautiful Miley Cyrus is, and how he hates the character Oliver and how cool the character Lily was. We're all looking like, what the heck? When the real dinger gets thrown out there, this guy, this poor delusional man starts telling us that he's in a relationship with Miley. That when she has a love interest in the show, it's really just a subliminal message that she's sending to him. That her lyrics and her music are for him. We obviously didn't question it because we're all pretty clear that this guy is off his rocker, so what would be the point? We all just kind of nod our heads and hurry up on finishing our breakfast. Nobody even had to say what we were all thinking, so we just tried to kind of shrug him off if he ever approached us again. We all kind of caught on to how weird he was, and everybody just kind of steered clear of him from then on. Later that day, after we digested our food a bit and relaxed, we smoke again. All that good stuff. We all decided to hit the beach. The part we went to was near a pier and a bunch of shops, so my friends and I decided to wander around and get a little time away from all of the testosterone. We roamed the shops a little bit and pick out some cute necklaces and the works, then decide to head over onto the pier. Now the entrance of the pier has this little gazebo type stuff with tables and drink machines. So my friends and I decided we were going to plant our little tired asses there and cool off for a bit. We're chilling there, talking about normal teen crap when I spot Dan sitting just a couple tables behind ours. My friend was sitting with her back towards Dan's direction, so I quietly let her know that Dan was there watching us and we should skedaddle. So we get up and start heading towards the beach. We get off the pier and make it to the beach and think we're in the clear. We hadn't seen him get up after us, but of course we were wrong. Not long after entering the beach part of the area, we peep that he's walking behind us. Not too close, but close enough that it's blatantly obvious that he is indeed following us. So we silently came up with a plan in case he got a hold of us. We agreed that we would jump him if he tried anything. We were two small teen girls, but my friend was a crazy little Gemini who had also been attending kickboxing classes regularly for years. This girl could roundhouse kick the crap out of him, and he 100% wouldn't expect it. So she made me feel brave and unafraid. The best kind of friend to have in a situation like this. However, as unafraid as I may have been, I still knew our best shot would be finding either one of my brothers or my dad. Fortunately for us, we saw my brother and his girlfriend relaxing on the beach, not too far ahead. So we hurried up to them, and Dan veered off somewhere else. Once we were sure he was gone, we started telling my brother about Dan following us. He was clearly bothered, but just told us to stay near and keep an eye out. Let him know if he says anything weird, and that was that. No idea if he wanted to snatch us up or simply just follow us around. I don't recall seeing Dan again that night or on our last day there. His gear was gone by morning, and we all breathed a sigh of relief because let's be real. However sad it may be that he was so very clearly mentally ill, Dan was weird, and we were all pretty stoked to spend our last day without him. Our last day was great. We all had a blast, and Dan never came back. So we packed up and waved goodbye to Savannah as we all laughed and discussed all the crazy stuff Dan had said on that trip. But we could all agree that this seemingly super nice and normal middle-aged man had given us a trip to remember. But wait, there's more. So after about a week or so of being home, my dad was watching the news when guess who pops up on the screen? You guessed it. Headlined, Miley Cyrus stalker arrested in Savannah, Georgia after trying to gain access to studio. Or something crazy along those lines, but it was 100% him, no mistaking. As they said his name and listed our vacation weekend in Savannah as the time and place of his arrest. And of course the picture solidified any prior doubts. It was him. So during that weekend when he wasn't with us, he was actively stalking Miley Cyrus and was arrested for trying to get into the studio or wherever that she was filming at. And that's why he wasn't there that last day. So we decided, screw it, let's Google this guy. Turns out that wasn't the first time he had been arrested for stalking her. Dan had been arrested in a couple of different states as he had been following her around the country. He genuinely believed they were in love. We found a video of him on YouTube being interviewed by some news dude. Different incident than the Savannah arrest. Dan was talking about how he was there to see Miley and that he was going to ask her to marry him. He looked so jittery and excited, like somebody who was truly excited to propose to the love of their life would be. I think that's part of what weirded me out the most. He really and truly believed it with all of his heart. And that, my friends, is terrifying to say the least. So there you have it, internet dwellers. The story of my camping trip with the official Miley Cyrus stalker. I changed his name as I'm not certain of the rules as far as naming criminals go. But a simple Google search should suffice for anyone who's truly curious. As a last thought, I'll leave you with this. I kept wondering why Dan was drawn to my friend and me. And recently, I relayed this story to a friend. Something dawned on me. Hannah Montana, or Miley, on the show was a brunette, and her best friend Lily was a blonde. I was a brunette, and my friend was a blonde. So what if he saw us and had some weird thought of us being like them or something? I don't know, could be a stretch, but my mind was blown when I thought about it. Anyways, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed my story. It's one I always enjoy telling because it's just so, what the heck, you know? LOL. My friend and I are still super close, and it's something that gets brought up at least once or twice a year. Either with her or with my family. A memory to last a lifetime for all involved for sure. So at least we have that. I live in an apartment complex in a quiet neighborhood with my girlfriend and our dogs. A neighbor will get the occasional domestic disturbance call for an argument or loud party, but never anything particularly crazy. About a year ago, I was taking my lab outside early in the morning when we were approached by a dirty-looking guy who got out of a rundown pickup truck with no license plates. My dog is 12 and has always been the sweetest toward other humans, but for some reason she went absolutely nuts at the mere sight of this guy. Something definitely felt off and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. At about the same time, my dog showed her hackles. He waved to me and asked if I knew what apartment the girl who drives the white Equinox lives in because he gave her a ride home last night. Needless to say, there were some red flags here. Number 1, why are you pointing to her car that's in the parking lot if you took her home? Number 2, even if I knew you, I'm not telling you. If you took her home and she wouldn't even let you in or tell you where she lived, that tells me all I need to know. I told him I don't know and I'm sorry I can't help him. My dog still hadn't stopped barking. Apparently that answer wasn't good enough, as he followed me into my building and said, "Come on, buddy, I just need to ask her something." I reiterated that I don't know her and I couldn't help him. Still not good enough. He began following me up the stairs, repeating himself about the girl who drove the Equinox. At this point, it's taking everything I have to keep my dog from ripping his face off. I finally managed to pick her up and walk up the stairs. As I got on my floor and was opening the door to my apartment, he came through the door that separates us from the stairs and began asking in a more aggressive tone. Mind you, I'm taller than this guy, covered in tattoos, worked out fairly regularly at the time, and had a large dog who was snarling at him. I'm far from a badass or anything, but I'm not usually the type of person somebody targets to harass. Up until this point, I was speaking to him very politely. There was clearly something off about him, and I just wanted him to go away, but screwing with somebody at their home is crossing the line. He kept approaching me as I was opening the door, so I finally told him, "Dude, if you come through my door, I'm going to blow your brains out." And this wasn't a bluff. I keep a handgun by the door due to some run-ins in my past. That, along with my tone of voice, was apparently enough for him to get the message, as I watched him run out of the door and back to his vehicle from my window. I notified the apartment manager and they said they would contact the police and figure out who drove a white Equinox in my building so they could alert her as well. I have no idea what he intended to do had he gotten in my apartment, or what his intentions were with the girl he was looking for. I'm just glad my dog has a great sense of character. This happened a couple of years ago, but I'm going to tell the experience in present tense as I feel that will make it easier to follow and to write in general. In case you're wondering what we look like, I'm at the time a 17-year-old 100-pound red-headed chick who's the furthest thing from intimidating that you'll ever see. My boyfriend Ian is a 22 super skinny white dude with shaggy hair and a bunch of tattoos. He's the second least intimidating person you'll ever see. Ian and I have a picnic every Thursday evening. The location usually varies, but we usually end up at our favorite spot, which we refer to as the best spot. Now, the reason it's called this is because we live in the dirtiest dregs of the most ghetto part of town, but amidst the abandoned buildings and blankets of graffiti lies a historical house surrounded by towering weeping willows and shrouded with vines. Across from the mansion is a beautifully secluded field with gardens and the greenest grass you've ever seen. It even has solar garden lights so that the whole place is dimly lit at night. Because of the giant trees and the fact that most of the street is abandoned, there's never really anyone there. It quickly became our favorite place to go. So we are having our picnic and we're smoking a blunt in a tree when we notice a passerby. Rare. It piques our curiosity, but we don't think much about it and go back to minding our own business and getting high and pretending like nothing bad could ever happen to us because, we're teenagers. This stranger appears to be in his late 20s, kind of short but really burly. He's wearing a gray hoodie and some baggy pants. He has a face tattoo. I don't know how relevant that is, but maybe it will help you paint a picture of him in your head. We see him a few more times as he nervously paces up and down the street, but once again we're in the ghetto. Our neighbors sell meth. A homeless guy lived with us for 6 months. We just assumed he's a tweaker or a drug dealer, or maybe just a lost soul, and go about our picnic without giving it a second thought. The sun begins to set and we decide to head home before it gets dark. Our house is about 2 blocks away and conveniently difficult to find. There's this apartment complex, and hidden behind that apartment complex is another tiny quadplex where we live. So we are making our way up the quickly darkening street when Ian turns to me and whispers, "Pretty sure that guy's following us." I turn around to see the same guy who's been lurking a good distance behind us, maybe 4 or 5 intersections back. I, being the oblivious person I am, chalk it up to the weed just making Ian paranoid and kind of brush off his accusation and continue on with whatever dumb thing I'm babbling on about. A few seconds go by and he interrupts me again, this time with a deeper tone in his voice. "No, I'm telling you, he's following us." This startles me. For one, Ian isn't the type to ever be afraid of anything, and for two, I've never heard this tone of voice from him before. Well, how do you know he's not just walking in the same direction as us? So Ian tells me, turn around and look at him, notice where he is, then turn back around and act as though nothing's wrong. I turn to look at him. He's a bit closer now, but nothing too out of the ordinary, I guess. A couple seconds go by, maybe like 10, and when Ian says, okay, now look again. This time I turn back to the man, and he is significantly closer. Every time we turn around, he starts running towards us, but when we turn back to look at him, he pretends to be casually walking again. At this point, he's only about 20 feet behind us, and we're stuck in that fight or flight moment where we only have a few seconds to determine the next step. We cross the street as a final requisite. The man crosses too. Me. So what do? Ian says, run. And then he bolts away, leaving me in the dust. Now let me tell you something about Ian. He was a track star in high school. In the 3 seconds it takes me to comprehend what was happening, he's already halfway up the street and around the corner. It's like that scene from every zombie movie where some jerk trips his friend and leaves him to be eaten alive while he escapes through a conveniently placed door. The thing about me is I'm a terrible runner. It's one of my biggest weaknesses, actually. I take off running and at some point glance back just to see if the guy is chasing me, which he is, and he's right on my tail. The worst part about all of this is that I don't have a wallet or anything of value, so even if his intention is just to rob me, there is no way this is going to end well. There's no one around. Absolutely nobody. I make it around the corner towards the apartment complex and am luckily much more familiar with the area than this guy is. I plummet into the apartment gates and zigzag through some of the tiny buildings, run through a clearing and past the first quadruplex, which is identical to mine, circle around and then haul ass to my front door. I've been running so fast that by now I have no idea if this guy is still behind me or how close behind me. In a moment of sheer panic, I fumble for the keys and somehow manage to get them in the doorknob, even though my hands are shaking like Elvis Presley. I fling the door open and slam it behind me and lock it as fast as I can. Then I wait in terror. Did I lose him? Did he see where I went? Is he going to come back later? What does he want? Is he going to bust out one of the many windows and murder me? I simply don't know. I don't have the slightest idea what this guy's intentions are, but there are windows all around, and even the door is basically one big window. Luckily, all the blinds are down, but you can still see shadows, and there's a broken blind on the door where anyone can peek in or out. I sit on the ground beneath the door in hopes that I've lost the guy, in hopes that he didn't see where I went. A few moments pass, but it feels like an eternity. Ian is nowhere to be found. I don't have any weapons, and I'm paralyzed with fear that he will see me through the blinds if I stand up or try to make it to my phone. Then it happens, the shadowy figure peering through the broken blind. I can only see his half-muffled silhouette, but I know he's looking inside. I'm ducked down, hopefully out of sight at the bottom of the door, and completely frozen. He stands there for at least a minute and eventually leaves. To this day, I don't know if he saw me enter the house or if I got lucky enough with the whole zigzag routine to make it inside just in time for him to not be sure which door I went into. I don't know what he wanted or why he was chasing us. I also don't know why he didn't just attack us in the field when there was nobody around and we were in such a secluded location. Anyway, the moral of the story is, screw Ian. This happened like 4 or 5 years ago when I was 17 years old. I had a girlfriend. I'm also a girl, and I was at her house for the day. At this time, I didn't have a good relationship with my mom, so I would sleep for weeks at my best friend's house. So I realized it's like 1 a.m. and I decided to call an Uber, as I live in a kind of small city, so buses stopped passing by at 10 p.m. approximately. I called the Uber and asked it to wait at the end of the block so it wouldn't have to take an unnecessary turn. When it got there, my girlfriend went with me so we could say goodbye. We hugged and kissed, but that kind of kiss that lasts like 2 seconds. I waved to her as I turned to sit on the passenger seat of the car and say hello to the driver. He replied to my greeting and started driving. He looked okay at first, but I was really wrong. He was in his mid-40s, his head was shaved, and he had a large tattoo on his arm. He asked me if I was a student, and I replied yes. Then he asked what I was studying at college, and I told him that I was actually in my last year of high school. He said that I looked a lot older, and I just awkwardly laughed. This is when things started to go downhill. The conversation went something like this. Was that your girlfriend? The girl you kissed? Yeah. How long have you been together? 1.5 years. Wow. That's a really long time, so are you a lesbian? Why? Don't be ashamed. I'm not homophobic or something. I actually really like lesbians, he said. Oh, so are you? And how do you do it if none of you has a dick? I really don't want to talk about that, I said. Why? Sex is normal. I want to know how you do it. Me. Have you ever been with a man? He said. Sorry, but I don't think it's appropriate to talk about this. Then he said he wanted to experiment a bit and have a threesome with 2 girls. Do you like men? He said. Not really, I said. It's okay. We don't have to literally have sex. He said he could just stand there and look as he touched himself. Me. We are not interested in that kind of stuff. Then he asked me how I know I don't like men if I've never been with one. Have you ever wondered what it's like? He asked. Friendly reminder that I was 17 at the time. My girlfriend was 16, and this creep was damn near 40 or older. At this point, I'm freaking out. This guy was taking another route to take longer to arrive at my friend's house, and I remember thinking, well, these are the last moments of my life. This guy is taking me somewhere else. Maybe it sounds a bit extreme, but where I live is not that uncommon for this kind of stuff to happen. I'm an atheist, but seemingly a miracle happened, and my friend called me. I put him on speaker, and he asked me how much more I'm going to take because he was worried. So I replied that the Uber driver is taking another route, but I'll be there soon and ask him to wait for me at the front door. The creep panicked and took me to my friend's place. I opened the door and ran as fast as I could to hug my friend. At that moment, I walked in the house. I just fell to the ground and cried my soul out. I'm a guy, and this happened to me in 2012 when I was 25. I was pretty oblivious to a lot of things in life and always had the tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt, although much less so now. I was having trouble finding direction after university, jumping from job to job, getting more and more discontent with how my life was going. I came across a post on a popular social media site that was advertising that they were looking for young people to do seasonal work in the US. I thought I had nothing to lose. The money to be made sounded promising, and it would be an opportunity to have an adventure. I contacted them, got the process going, but still was unsure of really going. My current boss was a real self-centered prick. One morning soon after, we had a particularly bad falling out, which resulted in me calling him a lot of 4-letter expletives and walking off the job while literally tearing my uniform shirt off and throwing it on the floor. That was the sign I needed to jump at the opportunity to go on the trip. I got a job offer from a farmer in rural central/northern Idaho within the week, and about 3 weeks later, I was on the plane to Salt Lake City and then onto a 7+ hour bus trip to the farm. After a few hiccups, a delayed flight, and a bit of stress, I got there. The 8 months went by flawlessly, and I had an amazing time. Great employer, making a lot of friends, and seeing so many awesome sights. This event started folding out about 2 weeks before I was due to return to my home country, in late November. Temperatures were below freezing already most days, and snow was sticking. I got home on a Friday evening about midnight after watching movies at a friend's place. I was a pretty serious night owl at that age and could function on 3 or 4 hours of sleep for months on end without problems. I called my parents around that time because of the time difference. It was around midday back home. Talked for about an hour or so, and when I hung up, I heard a vehicle drive up our shared driveway. The layout of the apartment block was as follows. 2 blocks of 4 units each, 2 on the ground floor and 2 on the first floor, 8 total. We had a shared driveway with all units facing the driveway and 1 parking space for each unit next to each other, right in front of the bottom unit's front doors. I lived in number 4, which was the right-hand side of the top unit in the first block. The creep this story is about lived in 6, which was the bottom right-hand unit in the second block. His name is Corey. The way my unit was laid out, I would have full view of the whole driveway and all of the car parkings all the way into the street. Unfortunately, there was very little light in the parking area as the street lights did not reach down the driveway. Now back to the story. I peeked out of my front window and saw it was the guy from number 6 coming back, as I recognized his truck in him as well from his stocky build, beard, and shaved head. I could hear he was mad and probably drunk because he was bellowing some nonsense and shouting something towards his girlfriend, who got out of the passenger side. He started kicking and punching some of the vehicles in the parking area, proceeding to knock the window out of an F-150, breaking down the railing from the stairs, leading to the second floor units. He went on for about 15 minutes with his vandalism and violent outbursts before his girlfriend herded him inside and it got quiet. Nothing else happened, so I got in bed because I had work that Saturday morning. When I got home about 5 p.m., there was a police cruiser in the driveway. I went up to my unit, and a while later there was a knock on my door. I opened up and it was the officers. They inquired if I had seen something the previous night about the property damage outside. My normal consensus would be to stay out of anything that does not affect me personally, but I did not want to lie to the police in a foreign country and risk getting in trouble. So I gave a vague and short description of what I had witnessed, making sure to not directly point to the guy in number 6, just saying a guy with a shaved head. They thanked me and went on their way. That Tuesday morning, I got a loud knocking on my door again. As I peeked out the front window, I saw the guy from number 6, Corey, pacing on my porch, shouting to open up as he knows I'm inside. I get cold, immediately thinking, "Aw man, now I'm gonna get beaten up." About 5 minutes later, my employer pulls up and the guy storms off. I go to work with my ass shitting bricks the whole day. I considered contacting the police officer that took my statement but decided against it as I do not want to cause more trouble. I get home pretty late, and a little while later, I see Corey's girlfriend walk over and come knock on my door. I open up and she asks if she can have a chat. I say sure and step outside. She explains to me that he is on probation and any incidents will cause him to go back to jail. I said to her, then he should not have acted out and vandalized people's property. After a bit of back and forth, I gave her the copy of the statement I had, showing I did not imply him directly, only giving a general description saying it was dark and I could not see much. That put her a bit at ease. I told her I will retract the statement, saying I was sleepy and unsure of what I saw if he stays away from me. She said she will talk to him. A couple of hours later, I get a knock on my door and it's the girlfriend. Corey stands at the bottom of the stairs saying he wants to apologize. I go outside, seeing my neighbor on his porch. I feel pretty apprehensive as it's the first time I lay eyes on the guy. He is pretty big, about 6 foot, 250-pound bodybuilder type with swastika tattoos on the visible parts of his arms. I shake his hand and we have a lighthearted conversation on my porch, and he apologizes, offers me his cell number and takes mine, saying if I ever want to hang out, I should text him. I thank him and they walk off. I make a decision to never contact him as I don't like associating with extremists. On Friday, I only work half a day, and as I got back to my apartment, just as Corey and his girlfriend drive in, we greet and they invite me to go out with them for dinner. I decline, but they insist. I eventually agree. They say we can all drive together. We meet up at 3 and it's only him. He says his girlfriend doesn't feel well. I get in his truck and we drive down to a local Mexican restaurant. Initially, we have a good conversation, but it starts to die down. We finish eating, pay and walk out. I wanted to walk the almost mile home, but he insisted I get in the truck with him as we are both going the same way. I feel uneasy but get in. We drive out of the parking, but he turns the opposite way of going home. I ask him where we are going. He says he wants to show me something, and he says where they always went snowboarding when they were in school. All in this monotone voice without making eye contact. At that moment, I went from being uneasy to being scared. I'm not a small guy or anything at 6'2" and about 220 pounds, but I physically have no chance against him. We drive out of town and towards the mountains. He turns off the asphalt onto a gravel road leading up into the mountains. I get more freaked out. After about 30 to 40 minutes of driving, he stops in the middle of the road. It's starting to get dark out and I have not had cell service for the past 20 minutes. He gets out and takes out a hunting rifle from behind his seat. He talks for the first time since we left the diner, except for answering my question about where we are going. He says, in that same monotone voice without making eye contact, "Now we go hunting." I'm shitting bricks at that point, saying I will wait for him in the truck. He looks at me and for the first time I see his eyes. Dark, dilated, and I can see the hate in them. He barks, "Get out." I get out slowly, my phone in hands, looking for nearby trees that I can run into or anything I can use for cover, as I am sure that I am the one that is going to be hunted. As I start walking around the truck, my phone rings. It rips me out of my daze. I was like, how the heck do I have cell reception here? I look at the screen and see it's one of my friends calling. I answer and her voice is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. I immediately tell her where I am and with who. She asks me if everything is okay. I tell her if she does not hear from me again in 30 minutes to call the police. The call starts breaking up. I repeat that if she doesn't hear from me in 30, to call the police and tell them what I just told her. The call cuts out and I look at Corey. His eyes are shooting daggers at me, red in the face, and he looks like he is about to burst an artery in his head. So mad. I tell him to take me home, turn around, and get back in his truck. He puts the rifle away, gets in, and drives like a madman back the way we came. The whole ride back, he does not say a word or make any eye contact. We get back to the apartment complex where we live, and he stops in the street, but does not turn into the driveway. I jump out before the truck even comes to a complete stop. I see my friend's car parked in my spot. I did not have a car, and she came running towards me as soon as she saw me. We go into my apartment, and I explain the events to her. She goes white, and when I told her who the guy is, she tells me to pack my bags, and I'm staying with her and her family. I pack my stuff, and we leave. We get to her house, and her dad asks if I'm okay, as she had filled them in after the phone call. I explain it again, and her dad asks me who the guy was. I said his name and gave a description. Her dad got a somber look on his face. He explained that I was very lucky and we should contact the police immediately and give a statement. Also because he was on probation, or parole, unsure which one. It was illegal for him to possess a firearm. Called the officer that took my initial statement, and he came by the house. He was friends with my friend's dad, and I gave a statement. I flew back to my home country a week later. I stayed with my friend and her family for that week as work was just about done, and they were having Thanksgiving, etc. The Sunday after the event, her dad and I were making a roast in the barbecue in the garage. And he filled me in a little bit. He went to school with Corey. Since school, Corey has been a bad seed. Dealing drugs, getting in fights, and just being a generally unproductive waste of a human being and a burden on society, really. His first stint in jail was just after 18 when he got caught with more than a pound of weed in his possession. He got 3 years for it as it was his first offense. The second stint was shortly after he got out. A nature conservation officer caught him hunting illegally, and when he confronted him, Corey flipped out and beat the officer half to death. That got him 10 years. His stay got extended. How long, I'm not sure, because he shanked a couple of inmates and jumped and assaulted a prison guard. He also told me that the police picked up Corey on Friday night and found him with a loaded rifle in his truck. He was promptly arrested as it was a violation of his probation. Our interaction took place a few months after he got out the second time. Her father said there were rumors of him shooting a rival dealer in a city close by, but nothing could be proven. He also was a proud member of the white supremacists. I saw his girlfriend the night before I flew back at the grocery store, and the look she gave me is one of pure hate and anger. I still wonder if she was in on the plan or knew what he was planning to do. This is pretty much where the story ends. I lost contact with my friend and have not been back there since. Also don't plan to, as I have had enough of redneck neo-Nazis. So, Corey, maybe you just wanted to take me out on a hunting trip and I overreacted, but with your history of violence, I highly doubt that. You had sinister, premeditated plans to take me out into the forest and hunt me like prey. And for that, I hope you rot in prison. Society is a better place without you roaming around freely. My best friends and I are both females and are 18 years old, but quite short and young looking. I'll call her Rose. We were walking down a very quiet street in Sydney, a little bit lost. I'm usually very alert when in public places, being a young woman. We were talking about albums and music, and a man jogged past us. He was looking at us, and I made eye contact with him the whole time before he stopped about 10 meters up. He looked to be in his late 30s. I already got a bad feeling about things, and I signaled that to Rose. He stopped us and asked us if we had any music suggestions. Awkwardly, we said no, and he said, "But you were just talking about albums." Keep in mind, he had earphones in as he jogged past us and was only near us for a few seconds. Does this mean he was following us without us realizing? We tried to turn the conversation down every single time we spoke, but he began to follow us. Rose is shorter and younger than me, and it shows. His questions were more directed at her, and I immediately started to answer him before she could. He got mad at me and began to try and talk some more to Rose. He would comment on the clothes she was wearing, and I would do whatever I could to intervene. Rose made me aware of the swastika tattoo on his arm. He continued following us wherever we would go, despite us being in a very public area of the city now. It got to the stage where I grabbed Rose's hand and walked onto a busy road, pulling her across, narrowly avoiding cars. He still followed. We then started walking down some hill with no idea where we were. He stopped and asked why we were going that way, and we said there was a place we wanted to visit. With that, he turned around and jogged away. We still don't know what his intentions were. We always felt safe at the city during the day, but now things feel different. I had a flashback with all the details while talking to my girlfriend on the phone and telling each other our memories. After hours of reading people's memories on Reddit, I have something to share and I can't wait to see your reactions. This happened at the beginning of 2023. I, male 22 at the time, was working as a terminal attendant at one of the biggest airports in Europe. My job description was mostly to give directions to arriving and departing passengers in this airport as big as a city, to solve their problems and to solve visa and passport related problems as well. For some reasons I can't tell you exactly which airport it is, but you can probably guess from the details I will give. Since the airport is really huge and is in a very key location, it is one of the transfer points for passengers coming and going from Asia, Africa, Europe, and America. So it was in the nature of my job to encounter very strange types of people and events. I was working 12-hour shifts, some days at night and some days during the day, and the area I was working in was determined by daily assignments. This incident happened during my 12-hour night shift on the transfer floor of the airport, the common point where international passengers wait for passport control before picking up their luggage and where the passengers of all incoming international flights flow. Actually, when we work, we are supposed to wait at a fixed point when passengers don't specifically call for us. But it was 3 o'clock at night, and since flights and passenger traffic slow down at this time of night, I decided to patrol around a bit. I left my station and went to the gate of the only arrival flight at that time of night. I decided to wait there in case passengers needed help when they opened the gate. After a while, the plane pulled up to the gate and the gate opened, and a lot of normal-looking people walked out of the gate and into the transfer center. Except that woman, that strange-looking woman who made me feel cursed by the cold January air. She was a brunette in her late 20s, covered in dirt and torn clothes. Her hair was missing in some places, and the hair that was there was rather unkempt, and I think a bit burnt. When she saw me in my uniform with unusually large pupils, she walked up to me, looking scared and confused. "Excuse me, do you work here? I need help." "Damn it, of course you need help." I wanted to take her arm because she was having trouble walking, but the smell emanating from her, don't judge. It wasn't a normal sweat smell, but it smelled like she was already dead, made my nose hurt, and I immediately abandoned the idea. I sat her down on a seat reserved for passengers, and I stood opposite her and asked her in a calm voice how I could help her. I had a very bad experience. That's why I'm running away from there. I haven't eaten for days, and I think there was something in the water they gave me on the plane. Since I drank it, I don't feel well and my mind is fuzzy. I didn't find what she was saying convincing. I thought she was in some kind of mental breakdown because her gestures and annotations when she spoke were very strange as well. But I was also familiar with the aviation rules, and I knew that something like this should be reported immediately to the police. When I told her this, she didn't like that idea, and she stood up and shook me by the shoulders and shouted, "No police. Never the police." Dude, she started laughing, looking up at the ceiling like there was something up there. The woman was making strange gestures with her hand, but her cheerful demeanor was broken by a sudden burst of crying. "No police. They won't like it." "Hey, the police, that's their job. Who said anything about cops? I'm talking about the people who did this to me." As she said this, she lifted up the burnt hair that had fallen on her forehead, and I saw one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. Look, I've seen a lot of strange tattoos because of the environment I studied and lived in, but this was different. Right in the center of her forehead was a tattoo that looked like the barcodes on products in the grocery store with some numbers underneath. At first, I thought it was a strange fashion sense for aesthetic purposes, but her strange behavior and some documentaries I had seen made me think that it was probably used by human traffickers to mark people, like slaves, so that they could be easily identified and caught when they escaped. When she realized that I couldn't help her the way she wanted, she at least wanted to use my phone, but I told her she was not allowed to use my phone due to the airport security rules and that she could use the payphones if she wanted to. Of course, she didn't have any money with her and I was not allowed to give her any money. Since she showed aggressive behavior towards me every time I insisted on talking to the police, I finally decided to do it secretly and brought her some food and some water before going to them myself. When I arrived at the police station on the transfer floor, the policemen were taking advantage of the calm of the night to rest. When I told them what happened to me and pointed to the woman, they told me that she was one of the refugees coming into our country. My country hosts so many illegal immigrants and refugees. It's normal for them to think like that, and that she was acting like that because she wanted us to let her enter illegally. They didn't take it very seriously at all, and unfortunately, I had to leave without any solution. When I went back to the woman, I realized that she had not touched the food and water I had brought her and repeatedly refused to consume them with a fear in her eyes. I decided to have a conversation with the woman so as not to be too judgmental. When I asked her name, she gave me a very strange answer that I had never heard before. It was like a name from some ancient language, and even now I don't remember exactly what she said. When I asked her where she came from and where she was going, she said she didn't know. To get this information, I took her passport and her boarding pass from her hand. I don't remember exactly where she was coming from, but an Asian country, and her next destination was not written on the boarding pass, so her ticket was valid only until here. I decided to end our conversation, which was not very productive, and leave her alone to observe from a distance. I had to go back to my station for some paperwork and decided to take care of it in the meantime. Later that night around 6 a.m., my other colleague was due to arrive at the station to hand in my shift. I was going to exit through the door where they were going to enter the transfer center where we were, and before I left, I decided to stop by again on my way to see this strange female visitor. When I went up to her, she was holding a book in her hand. It was a book with old covers and yellowed paper, but I didn't understand what was written in it until she pointed at me and called me over. Even then I didn't understand it. It was a book written in an alphabet I didn't know, in a language I didn't know. And I don't want you to think I was making it up, but it was a book with strange figures of people and other drawings. The woman pointed to one of the drawings and said, "This is how they do this." "They do what like this?" I'm confused. Can you be more specific? When I said that, she shook her head from side to side, laughing. She had an expression as if I wouldn't understand even if she explained it. I told her that a friend of mine would be arriving soon in my place and that if she had any problems or needs, she could contact them as she wished. I gave her directions to the restroom, where she could get food, the police station, and the ticket office. After a few seconds of looking at my face, she thanked me in tears and took my hands in both of hers and looked me in the eyes. I didn't know exactly what happened to her, but at that moment my heart broke and I put my other hand over hers and nodded. It was time to leave when my friend, who was coming behind me to take my place, touched me and I introduced them to the woman and secretly informed her about the situation. My friend told me that they were going to take special care of her, said goodbye, and I finished my shift for the day. When I woke up the next day, I texted my friend and asked them how she was doing. They told me that after I introduced them to her, they left to take care of another passenger and that they never saw her for the rest of the day. They said that when they asked the passport police and ticket offices, they told them that they were busy enough as it was and that they didn't pay that much attention to people and brushed them off. I never saw this woman on my next shifts, and I never heard from her again. Still gives me goosebumps when I remember it. I would be interested in your comments on the incident. If there is anything I missed or you want to ask, let's meet in the comments. Thank you for reading or listening. I've never really sat down and written all of this out before, and I keep getting reminded about it. So I figured I could post it somewhere to kinda, vent, I guess. And since this subreddit is about encounters with creeps, I figured you guys might get some entertainment out of it too. So first of all, the woman I call Nana in this story isn't actually related to me, but for most of my life, she and her husband were like grandparents to me. I grew up very poor and they lived in a nice house, so going to their house was like a super cool vacation to me. Well, then I was 12. Nana's husband, whom my sisters and I affectionately called Pappy, died from lung cancer. It was rough on me since his funeral was held on my 12th birthday, but it was obviously rougher on Nana. She changed after that and started acting like you'd expect someone to act if they were going through a midlife crisis. She bought a stripper pole, got a back tattoo, and things like that, even though she'd been pretty conservative before. And then she, out of nowhere, started dating and married another man, like super fast. We'll call him T. At first, T didn't seem too bad. He was kind of weird, but I just thought it was because he was the new guy, as it were. Now, T, you need to know, was probably in his late 50s to early 60s, and I was only 15 or 16 when I met him. The first red flag came after T offered to take me for a ride on his motorcycle. I thought riding on a motorcycle would be cool since I'd never done it before, and he was Nana's husband. What did I have to worry about? So we're on the motorcycle and he's driving me around. Everything's fine, and then he tells me I need to scoot closer and hold on tight or I'm going to fall off. Obviously I listened to him, and that was the first time he touched my leg. Just a pat on my shin. I didn't think anything of it. But then he did it again and again and again. At that point, I was getting a little bit uncomfortable, so I pulled away from him a little bit. He tells me I need to hold on, and when I hesitate, he no joke tells me, "I'm not trying to feel those big old titties on my back. I just don't want you to fall off." That should have been the moment where I told everyone he was a creep, including Nana, but I let it go like an idiot. Cut to a little while later, and T has continued to make me uncomfortable damn near every time I visit, but I still haven't told anyone anything. I wake up one morning and go to the kitchen to make some cereal. I'm wearing nothing but a long nightgown and panties, no bra or anything because I literally just woke up. Well, T comes into the kitchen and sees me standing at the counter. He walks up behind me, wraps both of his arms around my waist, and pulls me around him. I froze, but then he mumbled in my ear, "You're so sexy." Then he walked away. This was the breaking point. I told my parents and my then boyfriend, now husband, what happened. I refused to go back to Nana's the next time she asked me to go, and when I told her why, her only response was, "But he does that kind of stuff to everyone." Needless to say, I cut her out of my life for that. A few years down the line, I heard that T died, and Nana came groveling to me, trying to get me to meet with her. I went, but things between me and her have never been back to the way they were. I suspect they never will. I grew up in a small town in Alabama. A little bit after I graduated high school, when I was 18, I started dating this guy in his early 20s from a nearby city. He was very handsome, tall, muscular male that we'll call Sean for this story. He told me on our first date that he used to be part of a very well-known gang in the United States. Sean explained that he'd only been a part of this gang in his younger years because he'd grown up in a bad area and hadn't really had any other options. He also did have proof of being in said gang, including being aware of gang signs associated with said gang and having tattoos associated with that gang, which I did Google to see if the tattoos and gang signs were in fact associated with said gang, since I know there are some people who like to lie about being ex-gang members and the like for some reason to seem cool. But Sean didn't seem like the type to lie about that also. I gave Sean the benefit of the doubt because he didn't really give me any bad vibes. I remember he was always a gentleman to me and treated me very well. So of course I didn't really suspect anything about him. We dated for a few weeks before the night that I found out the truth about him. I was staying over at Sean's apartment one night and everything was seeming pretty normal. This was the first time I'd ever stayed the night at his apartment since I do tend to be a bit cautious. So regardless of his background, it wouldn't have mattered. I just don't really like staying over at people's homes until I get to know them a bit more. And I do have at least a 3-date rule. I'd been too busy before that to really stay over at his place. So that night when I was staying over, Sean's best friend was visiting for a bit. And that's when the red flags started to show up. It did seem weird to have a friend over when the girl you are seeing is staying over for the first time. And it was revealed to me that in private, Sean's friend was another ex-gang member from a well-known gang that is the enemy of the gang Sean had been a part of. Of course, I can accept people all have their backstories, but it was definitely just a weird thing to suddenly tell me out of the blue. Additionally, Sean had not even told me his friend would be at the apartment that day in the first place. An additional note, Sean's friend did not corroborate that he and Sean were both ex-gang members. Then after Sean's friend had left, we were hanging out in his room and this guy had a little arsenal in his room. I'm not exaggerating when I say he had enough weaponry to arm a small militia. This included things like grenades, bulletproof vests, an AK-47 or a gun similar to it, to name a few of the weapons he had in his room. Needless to say, that was the second red flag of the day. That night we were in bed together and I can't remember what led to him revealing to me what he said in our conversation. He confessed to me that he was in fact still a part of the gang he had told me he said he was out of now. So of course I was immediately giving him this look like, "I'm sorry, what?" Then he proceeded to go on and tell me that he actually was a hitman for the gang and, while he hadn't been active as a hitman as of late, he would still accept hits if they were given to him. The entire time he said this, he just looked me dead in the eyes with the most deadpan casual look, no feeling in his eyes, and spoke like he was talking about the weather. It was extremely creepy and I knew right then that this guy was a straight up sociopath. I didn't doubt that he was lying. I've met people who try to get clout by lying about things like this and he was definitely not one of those types. I did stay the rest of the night and then left the next morning and never talked to him again. I was definitely not going to keep on dating somebody like that. There's not really anything to the story after that. He never really tried to contact me after. I'm sure some people will probably wonder why I didn't just leave right after he told me he was a hitman. I didn't think it was a good idea to react strongly and immediately storm out of the apartment. I also didn't exactly feel like he was a danger to me personally, but he definitely had the vibe of someone who had killed people. The reason why I recognized that kind of vibe is another story. He was always very polite to me, but regardless, there was no way I was going to keep dating him, no matter how attractive he was. This just happened last night. I popped into the Kroger on my way home from work, a little late, like 9 or so at night, just trying to grab a few bagged salads and whatnot for dinner. As I was walking in, a possibly homeless dude was also shuffling in from the opposite direction. I didn't think much of it, but I noted it as I always do. Gotta always be aware and cautious as a smallish woman alone at night. This hub has only strengthened that for me. I'm a tattoo artist, so I don't exactly have the look of someone you want to mess with, but I'm also only 5'2", so always better safe than sorry. I'm shopping in produce and he shuffles by. Then I'm in the freezer and he shuffles by. Then I remember I needed more produce and go back, and there he is again. At this point I honestly just thought, poor guy, it's pretty cold tonight. I bet as a homeless person you have to stay on the move. Keep walking around and you could get away with several hours in here, I bet. I wasn't creeped out at all yet. I did note that he had no basket or cart and no products in his hands, but again I assumed he was just getting warm inside. So I finish shopping and see him a handful more times. I go to the self-checkout. I've barely started scanning things when he begins checking out at the register next to me. As I said, it was late and nobody was behind me waiting, so I was kind of taking my time scanning my always too many groceries, which is why it was weird he was still there a few minutes later. He still hadn't had a cart or basket to check out. I glanced out of the corner of my eye and saw him just standing there pushing buttons on the screen, reaching in his pockets like he was paying, but he wasn't ringing anything up. That set my alarm bells off, and I looked around to take note of anyone around, security or otherwise. And behind me, at the bagged rice, a man is standing in a yellow vest like the cart pushers, but it's a guy I've never seen before. I go to this store a lot and I see he's mouthing numbers to the homeless man. 2240. I glance back at the dude behind me and he's staring right at the vest guy, who then starts making small hand gestures back like they are communicating something. And at this point, neither of them is looking at me, but there is one on either side of me. I still wasn't sure if I was just being paranoid, so I gathered my groceries on my arm and then pretended to fumble my wallet and sent change everywhere. Both men began picking up the change for me, and while they were bent over, I just said, "Oh, thanks, don't worry about it. I'm in a hurry, gotta go," and practically sprinted out the door. Neither followed me right away, and there was no one parked near me. I flung all the groceries into the passenger seat and was pulling out only seconds later by the time I saw the shuffling man come out of the store, looking left and right like he was looking for me, but also maybe just to return my change. Still not sure if I'm reading too much into it, but I keep calling it my near kidnapping, which I hope is an exaggeration,